It's the Go to Hell podcast. Strong opinions, weekly held. Starring Tim Curley, Colton Pierce. Now, let's join the show.
Interesting.
I haven't tried it yet.
Sweet.
Well, it is called Grain Man.
And it is a triple.
Our first beer that we're drinking this evening is called Grain Man, the West Coast Triple IPA. That's an Attorney General warning. This is from LCB, Local Craft Brew. Oh, no, no?
Yeah, they're up in Tehachapi.
Interesting. Mojave, California, crafted in Tehachapi. 10% ABV on a triple IPA. Keep cold, drink fresh, unfiltered, and super hoppy. Sediment is normal. Always pour into a glass. Cheers. LCB Brewmaster. Triple dry hopped West Coast triple IPA. Jeez, that's a mouthful. Heavily hopped with Citra, Strata, and Simcoe. New label, new recipe, but danky and West Coast as ever.
It's melony.
Oh, it is interesting. It's not bad.
No, it's just... It's different.
Yeah. It's not like go wait 8 hours for it in a line or something good, but it's good. Well, how has your week been?
Pretty hectic.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's been busy. Oh, great.
I bet.
Yeah, so the week's going pretty well.
Just crazy.
It's crazy. We're getting ready for the Super Bowl. Which, that's not that... For us, it's not that big a deal. We have 2 photographers there. Nobody else. I'm hoping next year... Next year, I think, is in Santa Clara. So I'm hoping to kind of cover that the way we cover the Rose Bowl and...
Nice.
The NASCAR races, since it'll be close. And I can get additional credentials than what we get right now. We just don't have...
Who's going to have a stadium in Santa Clara?
Levi Stadium.
Oh.
It'll be at the Niner Stadium. That's what I think. I think I'm correct on that.
No, I think you're right. I just was like...
I think that's where I know that's where the Niner Stadium is, but I'm pretty sure that's where the Super Bowl is.
I don't think I knew that it was in Santa Clara. I think I always was like, it's in San Jose, was always what I thought.
Well, it's basically...
It's already time for it to come back around to
Super Bowl.
Levi's. Hasn't Levi's hosted? Yeah.
I think so. They did the national championship a couple years ago. It was Clemson. Clemson put the beat down on Alabama.
Yeah.
Yep. It's Bay Area. It'll be at Santa Clara's Levi Stadium in 2026. So, which is also where they will have World Cup games, matches, not games.
Yeah, there's a few stadiums that are going to have that.
All right. So how's your week?
It's been okay.
This is it's gotten more bitter as it sat here.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I don't know if it's because it's not as cold or what, but
yeah, it's good. I don't have a problem with this beer. I drink it. Yeah, week's been okay. I got told last week that I'm going to be submitted for rehiring next year, which is great. That means that I'll be on to tenured. I don't believe that teachers should have tenure if you like have an honest conversation with me. I don't know if I've ever disclosed that on this podcast, but I'm pretty adamant against tenure. It's just really hard. Like, it's hard when you're a part of the system that accepts tenure. And so, like, for me, I'm an isolated group that's looked at every single year for by principals that are deciding whether or not they want to keep their staff, and that particular staff group, that particular isolated group of individuals, but we're not looking at the bulk of the staff. It's just those incidences and, the people that like are problems or whatever. And so they go and they look at those 4 or 5 others or whatever.
Right.
Where it's like, okay, why is it that we're not all on the chopping block every single year? Where a teacher who's been here for 15 years has to prove themselves as much as somebody who's been here for 2 or 3. And so that's just part of it where I don't necessarily, because also that's the hard part about it with tenure. I believe that you're not incentivizing your teachers to grow, in my opinion. They can't grow, they can't learn, because they don't have to. You can try and push them or whatever, but they're not being, there's no reason for them to grow other than their own professionalism, basically, and their own desire to get better. Because we're not rewarded, or we don't receive higher pay based off of our job performance.
Yeah, it's all.
And it's not, and if we're being honest, like, it shouldn't be based around test scores, like, because you could have a group of kids that are just fuck-alls, like,
Right.
It's about, are you putting in the work? Are you engaging students and learning? Are you doing whatever? But a teacher who has tenure could just be sitting there waiting for his golden handshake from the state to come in and just drop out after that or whatever. I was like, I still think it's one of the funniest moments on The Simpsons is Mrs. Krabappel. I think it's Mrs. Krabappel or it's Lisa's Lisa's teacher. It might be Lisa's teacher because I think it'd be more funny that way. She's like, and just like that, I hit tenure. And so she just kicks her feet up on the desk and lights a cigarette and just lets the kids do whatever. I think that's so funny because I knew teachers in my high school that were like that. But and so I'm against it, but it's really difficult to be somebody that's the only person that's under the gun. It's hard being under the gun and other people aren't on a regular basis. So it'll be nice but there's definitely going to have to be something within me that's going to have to not get lazy and do what I'm supposed to do to continue to grow and develop my craft. So, yeah, but that's really exciting. I was like, we had all the boys over on Saturday. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I made the mistake of staying up till 2 the night before. That was a terrible idea.
Well,
I came home and I was done. The rest of the day was useless.
Had really boring soccer games to watch.
The drinking game was fun.
The drinking game was fun. We had a plumbing issue at my house.
Oh, yeah. How'd that get resolved?
It's still not resolved. Well, it's resolved enough. Like, they snaked it, but they're like, so you have a root intrusion in your sewer line. So it's going to be like $8,000 to fix it.
I have to put down a whole new pipe.
Yeah.
It's the drainage from the house to the street to the sewer.
Yeah.
Do you have a tree out there? Or does your neighbor have a big tree out there?
Apparently it was my wife's lilac bush. It's like she planted it like right over the sewer line.
Oh, yeah.
And I was looking at it and I was like, oh, that's not that deep. And I'm like looking at the roots of this lilac bush and I'm like, yep, that did it. So, and we have what's called Orangeburg. So if you don't know about Orangeburg plumbing, it was something that was really cheap that they started laying down in the Great Depression. It looks like plastic kind of, but it's
paper. It's basically like paper, right?
Yeah. So it's like, nowadays they do hydrojetting. If you've got root intrusion, they do a hydrojet through there and they're like, all right, if we can come out every like couple of years and we can just like blow it all out of there and it's not that big of a deal. But if you have Orangeburg, it just blows straight through that thing. And so they're like, yeah, we can't do it if you have Orangeburg. And lo and behold, that's what we have for like this section of piping. But it's not all of it. Some of it's cast iron. So,
wow.
So what they're going to do is they're going to take out our Orangeburg that's on the side of the house, and they're going to put in new plastic pipe, and they're going to like melt it basically to the other pipe to where it's never coming off again. But like no roots are getting into there. Cause yeah, basically, and where my wife's lilac bush is planted is where the Orangeburg meets the plastic. So she literally planted it in like the worst spot. So yeah, gonna fix that. It's gonna be fun, but I was like, at least it's done and over with. They're like, and we guarantee the pipe for 25 years. So I was like, cool.
We had a similar problem at our old house. Same with Orangeburg. We hadn't planted a new tree, but Danica had this massive, like 60, however, I think the house was built in like the late 40s, early 50s. And the tree was as old as the house. It was a massive, like 56-year-old liquid amber tree.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd had like a bad drought, and that's one of those trees where I remember correctly, that's one of those trees where the roots start coming out because they're seeking water. You know, some trees, it doesn't affect them. They don't rely on that much water, but the amber, the roots started coming up. And so we had the same issue. They came out and said, well, you've got basically your pipes disintegrated into nothing.
Yeah.
And on top of it, you have roots going in, and they're basically like, we'll replace it, but until you get rid of that tree, you're going to keep having the problems. Like that tree's just too big, and it's going to invade whatever we put in there. So it was already like a really old tree. Liquid amber trees are really pretty, but they're terrible for a front yard because they drop those really hard, prickly balls.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't really bloom up and get pretty like a lot of other trees do.
No, but they're just that big foliage tree.
Yeah, it's like a big, like poor man's oak.
Yeah.
And I felt bad taking it down because I just, I respect old trees, but it had to go.
Well, that and like you said, their roots do come up.
Yeah, well, and they were saying like, those roots come up, and apparently those roots, they can get really long. So they're like, look, you should probably take that tree out because it might be going underneath the house, because our house was elevated. Because we had under the house, we had a crawl space because that's where the AC and the heat went under the house, which was wild. So anyway, so I figured when you were having that issue, I was like, it's either that or the pipe settled and now it's not at the correct angle.
Yeah.
Which we had on the other side. So the issue with the tree was on the bedroom side of the house, and then like 2 years later, same issue. And we'd redone the yard, or no, I think we were in between taking the tree out and redoing the yard. We were about to redo the yard. The guy came out and was like, yeah, you're like a foot. You're like whatever proper angle, like every 4 feet instead of every 1 foot or whatever the thing is. So
yeah,
it's like, so that ended up being cheaper because he just had to retrench and then get the level different, but we didn't have to take the pipe out. But plumbing's always fun.
Yep. So paying off the car, we'll have to wait a little bit longer. Whatevs.
Yeah.
It's all good. I was like, what's nice is that we're still not going to go. We paid off our credit card debt a month ago. And so we're even now, we're still, even with that bill, we're not going to have to go into financing or credit card debt for it. So that's nice. At least we're able to like take that punch. I was like, I don't think we could take another punch after that, but we can take that one. So, and that'll be good. Less stress on my wife. So,
yeah.
Which we got to see the baby boy today, which was great. Well, we got to see him. Audrey got to see him at her ultrasound. So
awesome.
19 weeks on Friday. We have confirmation that he is a boy. My wife got flashed today. I was like, the only time that it's appropriate to have a dick pic.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how everything's going for me this week. It's still good. So.
Well, I guess we might as well just get into the main topic tonight. Unless
Sounds
you
good.
had any. Well, unless you want to talk about music real quick or something.
Yeah, if you want to talk about the fact that Kendrick Lamar wins all 4 of the Grammys that he was nominated for Not Like Us, which is hilarious. Also, because that guy loves double entendres and just soaking the shit out of it, he wore a Canadian tuxedo for when he accepted the awards. Wore a denim LA Dodger cap on top of the fact that he was wearing denim jacket, denim pants. So funny. He dedicated it to the city. It was awesome. I think for him, and based off if you look at his interviews, I think he was laughing too much over the fact that he was winning awards for that shit. He was like, I should not be winning awards for this. He's like, I'm glad y'all loved it, but like, he's like, I've written way more meaningful shit than this. So, yeah, it's good. But then something that's gotten people up in arms about, which I don't know, we didn't talk about it. Beyonce won Country Album of the Year. So
I just think it's an example of gross cultural appropriation. So,
nice.
I mean, let the crackers have their little corner of the music space. Why do you have to be intruding in on it?
Yeah, I have no problems with Beyonce winning.
I had a problem with it, but your response was most years it's garbage kind of pop country that wins in the Grammys is fair enough, and so as long as that's what's really getting nominated and not like real country, that's a good reply.
I mean, your real country gets nominated. It's not going to win, but yeah.
Well, yeah, win. It's so it kind of goes in line with what else. And then yeah, the fact that it's her 33rd Grammy, give me a break. So that's ridiculous.
It's okay. I was like, Taylor Swift won Country Music Album of the Year with like a super poppy album too. So at least Beyonce added a twang to her stuff. So I actually don't dislike. I don't have a problem with Beyonce's country album. I thought it was fun. I don't know if it's like Country Music Album of the Year status.
Yeah.
Like I said, I thought it was fun. I thought it was creative what she was doing outside of her genre type. And she talked about how like, it was a lot of what she had grown up with, again, that whole yeah, and I mean, I don't want to speak for the culture, but I will say it is a heavily African American influenced country album. So good for it. Like, I don't have a problem with it. It's just not. But if it's not your cup of tea, I was like, I'm not going to sit there and call you a racist. I'm just going to say, yeah, it's just not what you're expecting from a country album. So, but yeah. So I don't remember. Oh, there was Kanye West's new wife showed up naked, but not naked.
Oh, that was wild. I guess
she wore like a.
I guess
slip
he's
dress.
off the Jesus train.
No, he's definitely still on it. What are you talking about? He's just
part of a female nudist cult.
It's Kanye West. He loves to do things like that guy does. That guy is like the epitome of there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Oh, well, yeah, he showed up and she dropped the
coat.
And then Don Lemon tried to interview him, and he said something like, I got to get in my Headspace or something, but then blew him off and didn't do the interview, and then they decided not to go. They just showed up for the red carpet and what they got out of it, which was the publicity of her wearing that ridiculous
Yeah, that's basically all they did.
bodysuit of pantyhose. And then, so then someone, I don't even think it was starting a rumor. I think just someone just assumed that they didn't go inside. They probably got kicked out because the Grammys were like, look, we're all about, it's one thing to show up like in a Roman,
Togue.
Gaga showed up in like one of those slave train things where she's like sitting on top, guys are like hoisting her in like a Roman rich person.
Oh my goodness, why can't I think of the name of this?
Yeah, so, and it was like egg shaped, so there's a level of strangeness, but we can't have you just basically being naked. So I think people just assumed they got kicked out, and no one kicked them out. They just showed up for the red carpet and then bounced.
This is gonna bug the shit
And then
out of me.
so
that I
then
can't
he
think of the name of that
accused Don Lemon of starting the rumor, and Lemon's like, dude, I didn't even start and I don't even like Don Lemon. I'm defending him. He's like, so it was just, he was off his meds again. She's.
I don't think he's off his meds. I think he's Kanye West. He has friends, like, and I don't think that he had friends before he had power and popularity. So he made friends with Jay-Z, and he made friends with lots of people in the business.
Well, he's kind of like today's Andy Warhol.
The dude's
but even
a genius,
weirder, but very similar.
Yeah, and it's just, and there's got to be something about him that we're not seeing, right? Like Kim K was married to him for like a while, right? So it's like, and I'm not saying that she's sane or anything, but I'm like, logical people want, like, there are people out there that we would sit there and say, those are fine. Like, they understand that there's something about him that we're not seeing, in my opinion.
Well, look,
and so
super talented people tend to be very eccentric, and so the fact that modern artists tried to present themselves as being like regular, that's the achievement. He's basically acting the way, he's just acting how a lot of them actually do in real life, and you just don't see it because it gets covered up by assistants and agents and all that kind of stuff. But, talented and creative people are usually eccentric, which today most people would say crazy. That's not really the correct term. They're super eccentric, and he's somewhere on the spectrum between very eccentric and, probably needs a little bit of medication as well, but definitely super eccentric. But most of them are. Normal people don't do what they do. To do what you're going to do, do what it takes to get to be a musician, and to live that lifestyle and want that kind of thing. It's similar to inventors like Edison and Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. And people are like, Elon Musk's a whack job. Hello. Most of these people who invent like that are super inventive, but they're also very eccentric. And that's the reason why they do where you say, well, I wish I could do that. You don't, because you're not eccentric the way he is or she is. And so, Taylor Swift does a very good job of presenting herself as this every girl. She's not. She's a weirdo. She is hyper focused. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. I'm just saying, like, compared to everybody who listens to her music, she's a whack job. She's hyper focused and eccentric and views the world differently than you who listen to her music and go, oh, isn't she amazing? I mean, just the fact that the way she and John Mayer John Mayer's another one of just being able to take emotional thoughts about dating and all that and put it into lyrics the way they do, where you're just like, oh yeah, I feel like I've been here before. And I think they do it even when they don't experience exactly what they're writing. They're just good at kind of imagining, like, this is, yes, she has her very famous breakups and she's writing about people, and so does John Mayer. But I think they're also very good at just intuiting what that kind of emotion is. And that's not really normal. It doesn't make you, doesn't make him a whack job, but they're certainly eccentric. But Kanye is super eccentric. Like
Yeah.
he's a 10 on the spectrum. And so it makes it really easy to laugh at. And I think that's why, with the way he, when he claimed he was a Christian, I'm using the word claim. I have no idea where he is with his faith, but he looked at his Christianity in a very eccentric way, because you're not going to get him to look at things normal.
His first album had Christian songs in it, including gospel music.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that put him on. He was.
You probably grew up in the church then.
Well, and in Chicago, a lot of the things that he used to sample was not only old hip hop beats, but he also started sampling gospel music as music for a lot of his songs.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And so a lot of today where that choir gets used in hip hop music, that's actually due to Kanye.
Okay.
He was the first to really pioneer that. I don't know if he's the first to do it, but it was one of those where he got traction with that. And he was using so today now in hip hop music where you have samples integrated, where it's like, all right, I'm going to break up these different parts of other songs and we're going to sample that music into the music over and over and over again. And you're going to go over this old hip hop beat or this old R&B beat or this old, whatever. Originally they were from originally a lot of the drums came from old disco beats for hip hop when it was first starting off, but Kanye took it to a whole nother level. And so his first starting hit was he did Jay-Z's Ain't No Love. And so Jay-Z does a sample of Ain't No Love by what's his name? Ain't no love in the heart of the city. And so he takes that old blues record and he makes it into a hip hop beat for Jay-Z to then rap over, and that becomes like the chorus for it. And then he gets his own album, which is The College Dropout, which he then does all of his so that's when he does his like spiel. The College Dropout is a fantastic album.
Bobby Blue Bland.
Yeah. I would not listen to The College Dropout if you are in college. It's very difficult to go to college while you're listening to The College Dropout, because it makes a lot of sense. You're just like, yeah, why the fuck am I doing this? But in that album, he has a lot of gospel. Fly Away is on that album. He doesn't sample Fly Away. It's in the album. Like, he does an excerpt from Fly Away. There's a couple of other ones. He has a song called Jesus Walks, and literally he talks about the fact that labels don't want to hear about Jesus, and he's like, and I think one of his lyrics are, if it takes away from my ends, it'll take away from my spins, but as long as it takes away from my sins, next time I'm in the club, everybody's screaming out Jesus walks. And it's the whole idea that Jesus walks with him. So he's like, I could talk about, one of his lyrics is, I could talk about sex, drugs, murder, rape, but if I talk about God, then my record won't get played. And so that's really funny. So we have that. And then over a decade and a half later, he drops Jesus is Lord. And people are like, did you know Kanye was a Christian? I was like, bro, it's been here since album one. Like, even his second album, his third album, he does kind of go away from it in the late thousands to the early tens. There's a lot less Christian influence as far as like the Gospels, choir kind of stuff going on. But I was like,
Kardashians.
It's been a part of who he is for a long time. Even his Life of Pablo had lots of where he was going to be Saint Pablo or whatever. That was all about, I was like, there was a lot of Christian undertones. Ultralight Beam on there was like, it had Chance the Rapper, which Chance the Rapper is the most secular Christian artist that's out there, but he lost a lot of fan base after he got married, but and it was crazy. So I was like, you can go to a Chance concert now and like nobody's there, which is so sad, because he put out one of my favorite rap albums of all time. It's called Coloring Book, and it's so good, and it has so much gospel influence. It's literally like his entire inspiration was going to church with his grandma in South Chicago, South Side Chicago, and like the majority of that album is all Christian inspired, and there's so much gospel music in there, like African American gospel, black music. It's so awesome. It's beautiful. It won Album of the Year for the Grammys that year, and it deserved it. It was so good. But some people like him better when he's on drugs rather than on God. So it's like, whatever. But yeah, so that's fun stuff with music. Kanye West is a musical genius. He is an anti-Semite. He is all the other things. He's crazy. It's just one of those things. If you were able to get past Michael Jackson touching kids, then you should be able to get past the fact that Kanye West is a lunatic. So, it's just kind of how it goes. There's crazy people out there in the music industry. There's celebrities that are crazy out there. It's like, if you can still cheer for Ray Allen when he comes down the tunnel. I was like, they exist everywhere. Actually, it's just celebrities. Everybody else goes to jail.
Yeah, there's, Aaron Rodgers he's who he is, and people call him weird, and I'm like, he's really not that weird. I mean, he's if you want to go on about how he's weird, I can start naming all kinds of other people in the league that you think are quote unquote normal that are actually much more weird compared to the rest of what the culture believes. So it's all.
Yeah. Look at Pat McAfee, dude. Aaron Rodgers, fun fact. Aaron Rodgers was a redcoat at Hume Lake winter camp.
Really?
Yep. When he was going to school in Chico, he spent the winter at
I did not know that.
Working at Hume Lake. Yep.
It was at a junior college in Chico.
Yep, a junior college in Chico. And he went and worked at Hume Lake for the winter.
Huh.
Yep.
He won't speak about his, and I'm not
faith.
Complaining about it. He refuses to speak about, that's one of the things that people say are weird, that he won't speak about his family. And he's like, yeah, I have a beef with my family. Then they have a beef with me. I'm not going to talk about it. It's something personal. Just because I play football in the NFL and everybody knows who I'm dating doesn't mean I'm going to talk shit about my family. And that was even after his family came out and talked shit about him for like 2 years. He's like, no, I'm not going to do it. It's a private thing. So I've always wondered if it was some kind of like, he just like rebelled against some like religious belief within the family or what, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I have no physical proof, but we always say that Aaron Rodgers was our redcoat. And you can't fact check me on it because we do, honestly. Like, if you ask Nolan and I both believe we're like 100% sure, but it could have been another dude. I was like, totally legitly. I was like, I don't die on that hill anymore. He was actually a redcoat. Like, I'm not making that up. But we always say that he was our redcoat. Right. Like, but
well, why not?
Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. I'll go get our second beer.
All right, he's going to get the second beer. I will start with an intro of what we're going to talk tonight about, and maybe this might be the first part of maybe not every week, but we haven't done a book club in a while. The last book club we did was Mere Christianity. So I stole a book from my mom's house. It's called Foolishness to the Greeks, the Gospel and Western Culture. It's by Lesslie Newbigin. Lesslie was a British theologian born in London, England. Spent a long time as a missionary, particularly in India, and then became known to be one of the more influential theologians of the late 20th century. Fun fact, my mom and my grandmother, my parents and my grandmother went to England. Oh boy, this was 91, 92. And they went there to do some research on various things they were working on when they were going to school. They were going to seminary late in life just because they wanted to. And my mom and my grandmother got to have high tea with Lesslie Newbigin in London. And that was pretty cool because my grandmother had been a short-term missionary in India. So they got to talk about all kinds of things, I'm sure.
I like this.
But Newbigin is a guy who he's shaped a lot of thought in the Christian church with the idea that that a lot of our assumptions about the Enlightenment are incorrect. Basically, that we have this view that the Enlightenment is all about objectivity and facts, and that it's religious versus secular. And what he reframes the world as Christian or religious versus pagan. And what we call the secular is really just a pagan culture, and it has its own gods, and where a lot of the things that we assume are objective are not objective. They're also based in sort of religious beliefs. We just call them facts when they're not really facts. There's certainly facts in the world, but there's also, what does he call them? Values, I believe. There's a distinction. There's always a distinction between facts and values. And a lot of times what we call facts are actually just values.
Right.
And unfortunately, in Western society, in the Enlightenment and now post-Enlightenment, we confuse a lot of those and say, well, this is just a fact. So I pulled. It's the very beginning of this book called "Foolishness to the Greeks," and I pulled. It's about 2 pages, and I thought it was an interesting little topic for us to talk about tonight. And in it, he basically lays out what it means to successfully preach the gospel in another culture. He's kind of generally talking as it relates to being a missionary, but I'm sure he would agree this applies to any situation. So even within the United States, I was trying to explain this to Danica the other night because she was just wondering when I was asking what I was reading about. And I said, well, it'd be like here in the United States, it'd be like if you decided you wanted to go and spread the gospel to Hell's Angels and biker gangs.
Yeah.
And his argument is basically you have to show up and look and talk like a biker, but you have to present a gospel that is different than the culture. It speaks to the culture so the culture understands it, but it's different so that it's a paradigm shift so the culture doesn't remain the same. You can still be a biker and still talk like a biker, but there's got to be some sort of profound paradigm shift,
right?
That shifts the new believer's mind and spirit away from the current culture they're in.
Yeah. And
they're basically they're now not a culture follower, but a Jesus follower. And that 3, there's nothing, even though one must look and sound and talk in the way the culture does, it is not our words. It is not what we're saying that it's doing, that it's actually, we've got to make it clear that it's the Holy Spirit and Jesus's words, the gospel in the Bible and the Holy Spirit that's doing the work and not us. So am I summing that up correctly?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Like an age-old one that gets talked about frequently is there's there's people that'll talk to you about, like, they go and they work with some of the indigenous tribes in other parts of the world. And so they go to these indigenous tribes and they're doing things that are horrific in nature or whatever. And so they get there and their first thing is not to just be like, oh, here we are to, fix this whole issue, and, you need Jesus. And so within 6 months of time, they go and they force them to change their ways or whatever. And they can witness, and they have witnessed, and you can hear lots of testimonies from a lot of these missionaries that go in there. Lots of horrific things where it's like they're doing like female mutilization, or they call it female castration, or not castration, circumcision, female circumcision, when they hit a certain age, and it's like this really brutal, terrible thing. And so, and those missionaries will go and they'll get doctors to help them actually with doing that. So then they're like, okay, well, at least it's safe, and a lot of people can sit there and be like, well, they're condoning this behavior and they're just allowing this to happen while people are suffering or whatever. And it's like, it's a part of the culture. We're stepping into their culture, but we're trying to make a change. And so instead, what they end up doing, instead of focusing on all these things that they're doing wrong, they focus on the things that they need.
Right.
And so they're like, okay, we're here. Let's help you build homes. Let's help you build infrastructure items. It's not about let's build a church. It's what do you need? Okay, we need shelter. Okay, so let's build shelters for you. Let's build this. Let's build that. And every Sunday morning, we're going to get together and we're going to do this thing, and you're invited to come and join us. And eventually the people go and join them because they're like, these people are building homes for us. They're building stuff, and they're inviting us over, and they're cooking us breakfast in the morning. And so they come over, and yeah, it's the same rice that they're having anywhere else, but they said, hey, we'll make it and we'll serve it for you. And we're going to do this little thing here. And if you want to listen and hang out or whatever, you're more than welcome to. And so they go and they come in, and eventually through that, after years of experiencing that, they change and they adopt new methods, and they don't do the barbaric or hideous things that they were doing before. But it's about focusing on that. It's not coming in and being that whitewashed, like kind of, I don't like missionary that's coming in there and it's just like, I'm going to go save the world. And you go in there and you just make an ass of yourself.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that get eaten. No offense. But it's really that idea of we are doing this to change lives through that. So I don't know. Oh yeah. Beer. Well, you have the can. I'm going to talk about the beer. We are drinking currently a beer that I don't know the name of. I don't know the ABV. I don't know the hops. I don't know anything. But I can tell you that I really like the taste of it. This is from Arrow Lodge Brewing Company. It is from Covina, California. Where the hell is that? Where the hell is Covina? East of Pasadena. Oh. Are we just drinking desert beer tonight? What the hell? Or is it like actually like close to Pasadena? I don't know what death, maybe that's their slogan, death or glory. It's a West Coast IPA. It's by where? Did you say Salinas? No.
It's between. Do you know where San Dimas is?
Oh, San Dimas. I thought you said Salinas. I was like, well, that's in a complete other spot. I am not tracking.
It's between. It's out there. It's not in that area.
Oh, is it over by
It's out there. What's
by the Bass Pro Shop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of up that way.
Out by the 15, or a little bit closer.
Not that far out.
Not that far down.
Where the 710.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Kind of what that. So yeah, in that area.
I think I've always just considered, and the people in Azusa are like boiling in their blood, but I've always just
so it's not quite to Azusa, but it's very close to Azusa.
I just always consider all of that just Pasadena. I'm just like, yeah,
pretty much,
it's Pasadena.
Yeah. San Gabriel Valley.
Yeah, it's the same thing that people
Shout
do.
Shout out
way,
APU.
So. Yeah, this is made with. It's really hard. They have it purple with dark font. This is Riwaka, Mosaic, and Strata hops. It's a 6.5% alcohol by volume. I really like it.
Yeah, this is tasty.
Yeah, it's really
good. We've been
good.
asking for a West Coast, and this is one.
Yeah, it's really good. In my opinion. So yeah, really good.
I think So there's a elk or a deer head on there for
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
for the logo.
and it's Arrow Lodge.
So
That's
I
making this one.
think Covina
Oh,
is
it's
one
a
of those
hop. It's a
areas.
hop with antlers, is what it is.
What?
It's a hop with antlers. Is the
Okay.
logo? So yeah.
So Covina is one of those areas where you can take the take the road up to Arrowhead Lake
Oh, got you.
and Big Bear and all that stuff. So
That
that's
makes
probably
sense.
what that's a shout out to that. Okay, so I'm gonna read some of this.
Sounds good. I was like, was I helpful with what I was?
No, you were. I mean,
Oh, okay.
you.
I don't know what you're reading, so I was like,
Sorry for the. I begin by looking at what is involved in the cross-cultural communication of the gospel. The New Testament itself, which chronicles the movement of the gospel from its origin in the cultural world of Judaism to its articulation in the language and practice of Greek-speaking Gentile communities, provides us with the model from which to begin. At a starting point, I find it illuminating to consider Paul's speech in the presence of King Agrippa and his court, Acts 26. The cultural setting is that of the cosmopolitan Greek-speaking world of the Eastern Roman Empire. Paul is speaking in Greek, but at the decisive point of his telling of his story, at the decisive point of his story, he tells the court that when God spoke to him, it was not in Greek, but in Hebrew. Paul says, "I heard a voice speaking to me in the Hebrew language." The language of the home and the heart, the mother tongue. Paul is a citizen of that cosmopolitan Greek-speaking world, but in the world that changed the course of his life was the world of the spoken in Hebrew, the languages of his own native tongue. But, and this is equally important, the word spoken to his heart, while it accepts the language as its vehicle, uses it not to affirm and approve the life that Saul is living, but to call it radically into question. Why do you persecute me, God says. It's to show him that his most passionate and all-conquering conviction is wrong, and what he thinks he is serving in the service of God for is fighting against God, and that he is required to stop in his tracks, turn around, and renounce the whole direction of his life, to love what he had hated and to cherish what he had sought to destroy. And, this is my third point, a voice that makes such a demand can only be the voice of the sovereign Lord himself. No one but God has the right and power to contradict my devotion to God. Who are you? Is Paul's trembling question. It's the same as Moses' question at the burning bush. What's your name? The answer, I am Jesus, means that from henceforth, Saul knows Jesus as simply and absolutely Lord. Here we have, I suggest, a model of what is involved in the communication of the gospel across a cultural frontier. The communication has to be, the communication has to be in the language of the receptor culture. It has to be such that it accepts, at least provisionally, the way of understanding things that is embodied in that language, and if it does not do so, it will simply be an unmeaning sound that cannot change anything. However, if it is truly the communication of the gospel, it will call radically into question that way of understanding embodied in the language it uses. If it is truly a revelation, it will involve contradiction, a call for conversion, a radical metanoia, a Greek word which means a U-turn of the mind. 3, finally, this radical conversion can never be the achievement of any human persuasion, however eloquent. It can only be the work of God. True conversion, therefore, which is the proper end toward which the communication of the gospel looks, can only be a work of God, a kind of miracle, not natural, but supernatural. So, in that, I think we get to see perfectly Newbigin's worldview, because he's pointing out that yes, we can have all these intellectual ways of trying to communicate the gospel, and I'm going to lay out this is the best way to do it. But at the end of the day, we have to accept this very enlightenment view of the world, that it's ultimately a supernatural thing that brings people to Christ.
yeah.
Do you have anything else? on that part?
I got a fun fact for you, not to to take away from our scholars' consensus here. So, but important information for people to know. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't take away from anything that's being said. It's just something to note is that there are 3 languages that they probably would have known. So like Paul would have known. So if you ever get asked this question, especially since you're having to know that Paul knew Greek, yes, Paul knew Greek, Jesus knew Greek, or it should be widely assumed that all of those people in that area at that time, Jews in that area, knew 3 languages at least. So Hellenism had taken over. If you're unfamiliar with the term Hellenism, that's Alexander the Great's conquering, made Greece kind of the front runner for the world. Rome took over the Macedonian Empire. That kind of fell when Alexander, like there were a lot of infrastructure, and so Rome took over a lot of that infrastructural stuff. And they didn't implement Latin. Latin wasn't really introduced until a lot more nationalists started taking over in Rome. So it really started with Nero, where they were like, we want a true Roman language. And so that's when Latin took over, which was after the death of Christ, even though Rome had been in power for what, like 200 years at that point.
Yeah.
And Jesus knew Greek. What they spoke on a regular basis was Aramaic. That was their language that they used during that time. And then there was Hebrew, which is the traditional Jewish language that was used. And so, yeah, I think that was a good connection where it's like, again, understanding that it is the language that Paul would have known. And I think that there's an extra level of divinity to it because, again, people that he would have met, even Jews that he would have met on the street, he wouldn't talk to them in Hebrew. He would have talked to them in Aramaic, because it's just the language that was the language that used on the street and that kind of stuff. Hebrew was reserved for those that were studying like the Torah, or for it's not what when you would go to the temple, that's when you would hear Hebrew, and so it was a very sacred thing. To speak to somebody in Hebrew, especially Paul. Paul would understand the bravity of it, so.
Yeah, I think he knew instantly it was a religious moment when he's being spoken to in Hebrew.
Yeah, so I just thought it was a cool moment where they were talking about the language and stuff, so just add a little extra stuff to it.
I'm going to read his next example, and I find this even more fascinating. This is where he talks about John and the Gnostics.
Oh, yeah.
So he says this, continues, the pattern is brilliantly exemplified in the Johannine writings. John freely uses the language and the thought forms of the religious world for which he writes. Much of it is suggestive of the sort of worldview that is often very imprecisely called Gnosticism and has obvious affinities within Indian thought. For this reason, the fourth gospel was early suspected of Gnostic tendencies and has later been eagerly welcomed by Hindus as placing Jesus firmly within a typically Indian worldview. Yet John uses this language and these thought forms in such a way as to confront them with the fundamental question and indeed a contradiction. So he's saying John's dealing with the Gnostics of his time, which was part of the Greek culture of the day. So he says, the Logos is no longer an idea in the mind of the philosopher or the mystic. The Logos is the man, Jesus, who went the way from Bethlehem to Calvary. That's the opening of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh. He's literally laying out that these things that are both spiritual are also physical, and the physical is both also spiritual. They're not mutually exclusive, which I believe is what the Gnostics believed.
Yeah, and so the Logos is... It has so many different definitions because once you study ancient Greek, it's like impossible.
Yeah,
for you to like decipher. Like, I mean, you kind of love the simplicity of it, but everything was based off of context. So it's like you would need. So everything that they did was based off of conversational. So it was you were having a conversation with someone and based off of what they were referencing, their hand motions or whatever, and what was obvious in the room, you were able to pick up what it was that they were talking about.
That way, I think Greek is very much. I think Americans more than anybody else probably understand that because we have so many words and phrases that, particularly in a modern context, you know what they mean strictly by how they're said or what context are used. Like wicked, wicked.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
We could just go on and on and on. And there's a new one all the time, and you gotta like it. But you quickly learn what the context is. And you're like, okay.
Which is hard because
Bad. I mean, bad was the big one when I was a kid. Oh, that's bad. And you're like,
yeah.
What do you mean? Well, no, it means opposite of what you think it means.
Yeah. Well, and the hard part was about Greeks is the more you study them, the more you're just like, you guys were vain as fuck. Because for them, it was literally just about how beautiful you can make a sentence sound. So it was like, how did it sound the best? And so they didn't give a fuck about subject-verb agreement, which is what we
Right.
like. We have laws around our language. Their law was like, well, what's the way to make that sound the best? Like, coming out of your mouth, how does that sound the best? That was literally it. So whenever they made sentences, they would put everything in random-ass orders, but the way that you would alter the word to make it work in the sentence would therefore make it sound beautiful. And it was like, it's so dumb.
Okay, he talks about this a little bit later. We'll get back to that. That's a very good point. I'll wrap this up. The Logos is no longer an idea in the mind of the philosopher or the mystic. The Logos is the man Jesus who went the way from Bethlehem to Calvary. In my own experience, I have found that Hindus who begin by welcoming the fourth gospel as the one that uses their language and speaks to their hearts end by being horrified by what they understand what he is really saying. And so logically, we move to the third point to which John gave equal emphasis. That is, Jesus puts it in the 6th chapter. No one comes to me unless the Father draws him in. The radical conversion of the heart, the U-turn of the mind, which the New Testament calls metanoia, can never be a calculable result of correct methods of communication. It is something mysterious for which we can only say that our methods of communication were, at most, among the occasions for the miracle. Which I think everybody who wants to not only be a missionary but a pastor needs to read this. I think it's discussed, but really take this to heart because I think this is just always the vanity of being in missions work of like I'm trying to bring someone to Christ and just having the ability to just turn yourself over and just say like I'm going to communicate what needs to be communicated and just leave the rest to Jesus. And if nothing happens, then it is what it is. But anyway, he continues. To begin with, we all think the words he hears simply as the equivalent of the words he uses his own tongue are listed in the dictionary of equivalents. But if he really immerses himself in the talk, the songs and folk tales, and the literature of the people, he will discover that there are no exact equivalents. This is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
All the words in any language derive their meaning, their resonance in the minds of those who use them, from a whole world experience and a whole way of grasping that experience. And this is the big... So there are no exact translations, meaning there are no exact Bible translations. He has to render the message as best he can, drawing as fully as he can upon the tradition of the people whom he speaks.
Yeah.
And that directly speaks to you, even just from a Bible to English. He's talking about, trying to do it in Hindi and Punjab, all these other foreign languages. I think that that really brings it home just from what you were talking about of we're taking this language, this Greek language that doesn't really translate to anything that we do.
Yeah.
It's a completely, the purpose of the communication is different to where we're very much like, generally speaking, we're very much, we're utilitarian in how we do our language. We're particularly in this modern age, like communicate this, be specific, and then we spend two centuries, but I would say particularly a lot of the stuff you and I've talked about on this podcast is the last 300-400 years arguing over what the literal translation of this should be in English, when I think his point is correct. There is no real literal translation. You're in a lot of ways trying to inject a classic Greek culture into a modern, postmodern English culture. There is no exact translation. And then we have these major fights over translations.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's why, no offense to those of you that read King James. King James is like the worst Bible that you should be
It's
reading.
atrocious.
I was like, that's the worst translation that exists. I understand that it was good for the time and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But you should not, to this day, you should probably not be reading that. I mean, you can if you want to. It's just it was designed to be like the most literal Bible ever. And which what we just talked about is not good. So.
Anything else on that part?
No, good.
Okay. Clearly, the missionary has to find the path between two dangers. On the one hand, he may simply fail to communicate. He uses the word of the language, but in such a way that he sounds like a foreigner. His message is heard as the babblings of a man who really has nothing to say. Or, on the other hand, now he changes it to another problem. He may so far succeed in talking the language of his hearers that he is accepted all too easily as a familiar character, a moralist calling for greater purity of conduct, or a guru offering a path to salvation that all human beings want. His message is simply absorbed into the existing worldview and heard as a call to be more pious or better behaved. In the attempt to be relevant, one may fall into this syncretism. And in the effort to avoid syncretism, one may become irrelevant. So, look, we can see this. This is not just a language problem, but it's just a basic culture problem. As America has become more prosperous, what have we seen become a thing in the Christian church, which is now I'm going to speak the language of money. So now we have this. There's a reason why prosperity gospel is a modern 20th century invention, because it would be absurd for the prosperity gospel to be preached before a consumerism came about. That is a gospel specifically coming out of the material wealth that we
out of
found
the prosperity
ourselves in
of its constituents.
Yeah. And so I think on the one hand, it's probably best understood as a very cynical way of preaching the gospel, but at best it's a way of trying to preach the gospel to a moneyed culture. But either way, it ends up being a dead, empty Christianity that I don't think is at all intended. You know, what is the intended gospel of Jesus Christ?
Right.
All right. We'll wrap it up on this a little bit, and we'll discuss a few more things. In despite of these dangers, which so often reduce the effort of the missionary to futility, it can happen that in the mysterious and providence of God, a word spoken comes with the power of the word that was spoken to Saul on the road to Damascus. Perhaps it is as sudden and cataclysmic as that. Or perhaps it is the last piece that suddenly causes the pattern to make sense, the last experience of a long series that tips the scale decisively. However it may be, it causes the hearer to stop, turn around, and go in a new direction, to accept Jesus as his Lord, guide, and Savior. The Jesus whom he thus accepts will be the Jesus presented to him by the missionary. It will be the Jesus as the missionary perceives him. It is only necessary to look at the visual representations of Jesus in the art of different people through the past 18 centuries, or to read the lives of Jesus written in the last 150 years, to understand that Jesus is always perceived and only can be perceived through the eyes of a particular culture. Think of Christ as the of the Byzantine mosaics, a kind of super emperor, the Pentocrat, the Christ of medieval crucifix, a drooping, defeated victim, the Christ of liberal Protestantism, an enlightened, emancipated, successful member of the bourgeoisie, or the Christ of the liberal theologians portrayed in the likeness of Che Guevara. It will inevitably be the Christ of the missionary to whom, in the first instance, the new convert turns and gives his allegiance. This may express itself in adopting styles of the worship, dress, and behavior copied from the missionary, sometimes to the embarrassment of the latter. But this is only the first expression of it. The matter will not stop there, for the new convert will begin to read the Bible for himself. As he does, he will gain a standpoint from which he can look in a new way, both of his own culture at the message that he received from them and at the message he has received from the missionary. This will not happen subtly. It is only as the fruit of sustained exposure to the Bible that one begins to see familiar things in new light. It is this new light the new convert will both see his own traditional culture as a new way, and also observe that there are discrepancies between the picture of Jesus that he, from in his own culture, finds in the New Testament and the picture that is communicated by the missionary. From this point, there are various possible developments. The convert, having realized that much of what he had first accepted from the missionary was shaped by the latter's culture and not solely by the gospel, may in reaction turn back to his own culture and seek, in a sort of hostile reaction to the gospel that he had invaded in his own under the cloak of the gospel, to restate the gospel in terms of his traditional culture. Some of what is called third world theology has primarily this negative orientation rather than being primarily directed towards the communication of the gospel, to which still inhibiting blah blah blah. What also can happen is that the missionary and through him the church he represents can become aware of the element of syncretism in his own Christianity, of the extent to which his culture has been allowed to determine the nature of the gospel he preaches instead of being brought under judgment by the gospel. If this happens, great possibilities for mutual correction opens up. Each side, perceiving Christ through the spectacle of one culture, can help the other to see how much the vision has been blurred or distorted. This kind of mutual correction is at the very heart of the ecumenical movement when it is true to itself. So, all that's a very academic way of saying the second part. I think the first part was clear, that the new convert's going to read the Bible and be frustrated or disgusted by the Bible and just then only look at the Bible through his cultural perspective. I think to use a gross stereotype, you can use I think what a lot of Christianity you see in the Caribbean, particularly like countries like Haiti, where Christianity, rather than excising voodooism and stuff like that, simply adopted it into the Christian culture. And so you have this mix of both pagan voodoo ritual and Christianity into one thing. And so it kind of becomes blurred. So, but the second point is, or both sides can come together, both the missionary can realize his culture has some blind spots. Certainly if he's an American Christian, he can realize that. And the new convert can realize they have blind spots and then come together in this and try to create this new synchronism, this new blend of these two cultures and how they understand the gospel and reading of the Bible to come up with this new cross-cultural view of Christianity. So I don't have an example of that. I don't know what that looks like. I'm sure later on in the book he does, but
Yeah, the hard part about the Christianity that is, kind of that blend that you were talking about is, yeah, there is kind of that element where we do need to not just assimilate it into whatever culture, because then you can have that backlash that we were talking about. And I think that that's true. And I mean, but that's where you get, like you talked about, the prosperity gospel. I was like,
yeah,
you took it to the Hinduism, or not the Hinduism, the Haitians or whatever, and you got this like hoodoo voodoo
yeah.
mixture.
But no, you're right. The
I was
first
like, but
example
that's
was
technically
even
what the
better.
prosperity gospel is where we took our consumerism and decided to mold it in with
Correct.
our faith, and we ended up with what we ended up with.
Well, I would argue that the acceleration of the dispensationalism in the American church. Dispensationalism is a big term for basically the what's talked about in Revelation, end times, all that kind of stuff. And in the 70s and 80s, that had been a particular, that movement had always been the
Left
view,
behind. Left behind.
Left Behind. Yeah, Left Behind is a perfect example. The view of reading Revelation literally, that that Jesus is going to come, that the temple, that Israel is going to become this nation, has become this nation, and now we're fulfilling the book of Revelation, and then now we're going to sit around and wait for the temple to be rebuilt, and all this kind of stuff, which would then lead to Armageddon, yada yada yada. I would argue a lot of that became popular within Christianity because of the Cold War, the scare over nuclear annihilation.
I think even maybe you
and
could go back to
also
World
on
War
the
II.
left with the concern, because environmentalism, the Cold War, global warming, all that stuff started also in the 60s and the 70s, and I would say both sides coalesced around this end times of, we're going to destroy the world either through nuclear weapons or through mass consumerism, but one of these things is going to destroy it. And so it's beginning. We're now seeing the fulfillment of this last book, and so it really became popular.
Yeah.
And there was a huge book in the 70s called Late Great Planet Earth, and it was all based on like environmental stuff destroying the world, and it was all tied to this kind of stuff.
Nova, I got you on PBS. Well, I think that. Well, and here's also something that I was going to say from it is, it's actually kind of a. No, I mean, you may listen to this podcast and you're like, they claim that they're a Christian podcast, but they don't really like quote scripture that much. And I got to be honest with you, our target audience, and I mean, like, if you're like, who talks about a target audience? Remember, I'm an English teacher, and so like that's something that we evaluate. But the people that we believe that we are talking to, I don't think that you care if I go Genesis blah 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 blah
Right.
blah. You're gonna roll your eye. You may not even roll your eyes. You just like auto tune that out.
Yeah.
And the truth is that's how a majority of the world works. But I think something that you won't tune out is that I believe that I'm supposed to love you no matter what, and that I care for you, and that when you have a problem, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to take care of the need that you need fulfilled. Because I'm not here to talk about the laws and the rules that you're supposed to be following or whatever. I'm here to talk about how I care for you and what it is that I need to do to help you. Because I believe that that's what my faith is all about. And because of that, I think that I believe that that is the countercultural thing that helps change and shift stuff. I think that there's a huge push by people. They're like, yeah, we got to do this to change this and change that. But I don't know if that's necessarily how change comes about. And so that's why I think it's a huge issue, or I think that I think it's great that we're having this conversation tonight to just kind of talk about what it is that we need to do or what people need to do to change their approach, so to speak. What are we drinking? Ooh, we're saving the Societe for last. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are going with a Belching Beaver.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we could just end the conversation now, but we have 2 more beers to drink.
Well,
so
there's
we
also
can
a whole other
we can
period.
draw this
There's
out
also a
with
whole other
happenings.
period of hockey to watch. So I mean,
Why is my microphone wobbly? Oh,
and maybe the Kraken are on a power play. I don't know. That or we're on a power kill. I hope we're not on a power kill. Oh, am I opening this? Oh yeah, Kraken on their first power play of the evening. Fuck. Oh no, never mind. It's 4-on-4. Fuck, bruh. Actually, we do well on 4-on-4s. Here is a West Coast IPA from Belching Beaver.
I think it's is it 3 breweries?
It's, I don't know. You can read. I was like, you have it. You can read it. I believe in your ability to read. Speaking of which, I finished my 4th book of the year this week. I'm on book 5 of the year. We're making progress. Will I hit 24 books this year? I'm going to finish a series this year, which is crazy. My wife makes fun of me all the time that I can't ever finish a fucking series. This one's going to get called back. Never mind.
That was a terrible pour. Let's see. This is this has got a lot of stuff on it. It says damn good times.
But that's
Damn without an N.
Yeah, that's Beaver. That's Belching Beaver.
I know, but then it says collab, so it's Bestern IPA, and it has very much a
They paired
Western
with Best
hotel
Western.
sign. Brewed with Mosaic, Simcoe, Strata, and Idaho 7 hops. That's all sounds wonderful. It's definitely with Westbound and Down Brewing Company. Great name.
Yeah, that's great.
Westbound and Down, not Eastbound and Down, but Westbound. And then Craft Coast, I think, is the 3rd one.
Oh, cool. It's really good, actually.
Oh, yeah. Road trips, beer festivals, airport bars, celebrations, 2 a.m. taco runs. Some things are best enjoyed with friends, and for this West Coast, we've combined forces with some of the best in the West for the 3-way brew collaboration, Westbound and Down Brewing Company and Craft Coast Beer and Tacos.
So here's something that I will say, and here's some. So the last 2 beers, I don't know if I classify them as classic West Coast, but here's the thing: is that a decade ago, and I'm going to say a decade. If you were to tell me, if you like, what is like an IPA from California? This is what they taste like.
Yeah.
Like, this is going back to that original California IPA taste. Like, this is that same flavor profile. It's piney. I was like, it's still fresh. It's not super on that pine bitter level that that Racer 5 is known for, or Sculpin's known for, or whatever. But it's still got that good IPA classic flavor. It's almost kind of like an old Lagunitas.
Yeah, it's more balanced than
it's balanced.
Racer 5 and Union Jack, which are kind of in your face. This is just very drinkable. This is the kind of IPA I think most people don't get a hold of, or they think that the accessible one's an East Coast, and so it's real fruity and stuff. This is very easy to drink.
Yeah, this I would crush all the time, and I'd never have a problem with it. It's delicious. It's
7%.
Yeah, this is something that I would be looking to drink while I'm playing video games or whatever.
Wow, I'm gonna have to go up to Rosie's tomorrow.
It's
Maybe
good.
buy whatever's left.
I feel that way about the Aero Lodge too, by the way. I was like,
that was fantastic as well.
Yeah, I was like, I felt like both of those were kind of that same kind of feel. So, liked both of those a lot. Curious how the Society better not let us down. It rarely does. So, I don't actually know if I've ever been let down by Society beer, but
I've never been let down. That the smoked lager, the more I drink it, was more difficult to drink.
that was Moonlight.
Oh, that's right. That was Moonlight. Never
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Society?
I mean, that one was fun. Society is the pupil.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
I've
no,
ever
no.
anything that disappoints. Oh, we haven't had their full array either, but
I feel like I was like, if I'm talking about like breweries that have like stepped down in quality from what I remember from them, like I remember things being like tastier and that kind of stuff. Like Coronado, I don't feel like is the same as they used to be.
yeah, I think they went on being like they went in on a huge menu. I think. I don't know what their deal is.
I just miss the Islander. That was like one of my favorite IPAs.
Well, it just might be that it's harder it's been crowded out. But yeah, it's. I don't think
Yeah,
I've
that
ever
was-
anything bad though.
Yeah, that was one. No, I still love Union Jack, but I feel like quality dipped at Firestone Walker. Felt the same way about Lagunitas. Like I was like, just quality dip where it was.
I don't think quality dipped. I think what happened was they got
is it just getting
they
over your
got
skis?
big, and big has to be consistent. And I think actually what we enjoy is a little bit of inconsistency. It's
We like the microbrew.
huh?
We like the microbrew.
Yeah,
aspect.
it's the inconsistency that is the joy. And so, Firestone crowded out all those little things that you could get easily on a month-to-month basis. As now it's just like the big beers, and then same thing with Lagunitas. I know they still brew a lot of things that we enjoyed, but they've become harder and harder to get because now they're a nationwide brewery, and
yeah, or maybe I just missed the kind of experimental.
yeah, I
like-
mean, Firestone definitely went away. Firestone for what, 3 years was doing Luponic every 3 or 4 months, and it was everyone was dying to try the new Luponic because it was always a little different. And yeah, like every 5th or 6th one sucked, but the other ones were really good. And then they just And then once they got all that money from Duvel, the Belgian company,
yeah.
they just started mass producing stuff. They crowded out everything. You couldn't get Double Jack anymore. Boo.
Let us get fucking hammered, bro.
But and I can say that they still, what Nolan and I had down at the Propagator for the Rose Bowl was 5 hours of fantastic beer. So they're still, but they're just not. They're not making it accessible. They're not canning or bottling any of that stuff.
Yeah, maybe
one-offs.
that's what it is.
And I think that's the problem with Coronado too. They've just gotten so big. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I still love about Russian River. They still stay small, even though they've gotten really big. And they're still experimental and all that kind of stuff. As long as they keep doing that, I think they're going to be okay. So
I think he's got. So there's a religious belief in business, in American business, Western business, particularly American business,
they have to keep growing.
that you always have to keep growing.
Yeah.
And I think that's nonsense. I mean, you can't remain stagnant, but stagnation is not growing. So you have to make sure that you're not losing customers, that you're building customers. But what that turns into a lot of times is growing product and everything else. And I don't agree with that. And I think what Russian River's been very good at is it has its 10 beers that it remains constant with, and then 5 or 6 things
it's more than 10 beers because it's that same fucking flight every single year. So it's like they got 16 beers that they consistently have. There's probably 10 that they ship out.
Yes. And then they have the R&D.
I don't even know if it's 10 that they ship out. It might be 6 that they ship. Nah.
It's it's pig.
It's pig. It's elder. It's the hops one. The hop corn or it's a hop plant or whatever. I don't know.
There's a porter.
Hoppy days or something like that. There's not conspiracies, conscription something. There's like 3 of those.
Right. There's a porter.
And there's their Belgians that they do. So it might be 8 to 6. I don't know what it is, but they send those out. Occasionally Mind Circus gets sent out. Occasionally, Citra Mob or whatever gets sent out, or Flash Dance or whatever. But yeah, so they do that. They have their brewery.
And I think that's why Moonlight's so good. Like, that guy's got no aspirations to be a huge, big brewer.
Oh, dude.
He wants to be left alone and do his thing.
Those are the 2 highlights of my trip, is going to Younger, and that's just for hanging out in lines. But if I had to be honest about what's my favorite brewery up there, it's Moonlight Brewery all day.
Yeah.
100%.
Because the bartender's always, he or she's always a kick. They're always super friendly.
Their beer is so
They're
fucking
knowledgeable,
good.
And the beer's great, and it's just a really laid back place, and
they don't give a shit about making any money.
No,
they don't. And the guy at Russian River was talking about him. He's like, that guy is a legend.
Yeah,
that guy's been doing that for like way longer than anybody else around here.
He said I wouldn't be here without him. He's the OG of Santa Rosa.
So
of
awesome.
Sonoma
Which just
County
makes me love that place even more.
Yeah.
Like it's just he's
well,
like, it's just him back there.
It made me love Moonlight, and it also made me love the Russian River owner all that much.
Oh yeah.
He was just like gushing, oh, Moonlight. I mean, you could tell he was like, all right, these are my people.
Yeah.
They like Moonlight. So these are really, truly beer people that they've discovered. And I don't, it's funny. I don't remember which one of us was that bought Moonlight.
It was me, but I got it as a Societe collab.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yeah, so that's what happened. It was at the Meat Locker at Quality, and it was their like black IPA collab with Societe, and we had been drinking a lot of Societe that summer because that's the year that we discovered Societe, and we were like, oh dude, this shit's really good. And I was like, hey, check this out, there's a collab or whatever. And we were looking at Moonlight, and then you like looked it up I was there, and you were like, apparently they've been in Santa Rosa for 25 years. And I was like, all right, we got to go check my place out. So we went, and we were like, this beer's fucking good.
Well, then it was about that time also. Then the Czech pills, like 2 or 3 of the canned beers started making their way.
We hadn't tried an IPA by them or anything. Which my favorite is still the Deli by Dingy. I love that. So the double IPA that they serve.
Hopefully this year they have it in cans.
They did. Remember, they didn't have it the first night, but then they had it the second night we went. So I bought it there. I bought like 2 4-packs, and then I bought it at the store, the liquor
Willoughby's
store. Yeah, that's what I bought. I was like, so
you have to buy a flat.
Yeah, that stuff is so good.
It's fantastic.
It's so bitter though.
It's very bitter, but I mean everything they make that's fantastic. His pale ale is amazing. The Czech Pilsner is fantastic. It just the black IPAs, like everything.
Even the smoked lager was fun. I don't want to drink.
No, I made the mistake of buying a 4-pack and taking it home. I should have just enjoyed it there.
And then I wouldn't drink a pint of that. But you, yeah, sure. Nolan, yeah, sure. But
no, once I got it home and then I had another can, I'm like, this is too much. I can't do much more of this. But then they got the Hell's, which comes in an orange can. I don't remember what that one's. That one's fantastic. That's like 3.8% or something.
The rice lager?
outrageous. The rice lager.
Yeah.
And the funky way they pour it.
Yeah. It was good. Yeah, it was good. They're great.
This
great.
episode's brought to you by Moonlight.
Yeah, we're not sponsored, but
This episode is brought to you by the Santa Rosa Beer Association.
yeah, I can't wait. We're 2 months out. Or no, we're a month and a half out. Yeah. It's exciting. Can't wait.
Should take our iPhones and record.
Yeah. Just be like, this is the Go to Hell podcast, hammered out of their minds.
Okay, what to say?
I don't know if there is much more to say. Unless you want to go into more.
Do you feel like he's arguing in this that there's got to be like a very profound moment where one becomes a believer? Or am I reading into it? Just by the example he uses of Paul. But it seems like other language he uses, like, there's got to be like an aha moment.
There is kind of like, no offense, there is kind of a Calvinistic underlying tone to it where it's like...
And do you agree with that? I struggle with that. Part of me says I don't like it, but maybe it's because I don't like it because I don't want like the implications of it not being so.
I don't know if necessarily, and I mean, I think that, yeah, he's implying a supernatural element to it.
Well, I don't have a problem with the supernatural.
Well, I don't know.
But I just don't know that if it's actually like the I know the moment I became a Jesus follower kind of thing.
I'm saying that, like, he is implying, in my opinion, I think he is kind of implying kind of that more supernatural. And I do have a problem with that because I don't think not everybody's going to experience the supernatural element of their faith. And I think that those are some of the people that are going to go through their life and they're going to... And that's where, again, when we looked at C.S. Lewis, and sorry for backtracking a little bit, but I'm saying that when we looked at C.S. Lewis and he's like, what do you build your faith on? And yes, we do build our faith on that a supernatural event occurred, but is that the thing that you're buying into, is that idea that the supernatural is just going to solve your problems, that the supernatural is going to come in and save you or whatever? Or are you buying into the fact that this is the thing that's going to restore and fix humanity, is the love and care for one another, and that's the thing that's going to help fix our broken world, because that's what you're building towards. And I believe that there is a moment, but I believe that moment is simply a person making a choice that they are going to live for something besides themselves, and they're going to sit there and say,
but the Holy Spirit's still involved.
Oh yeah. I'm not saying that it's not. I'm saying that, but I'm not sitting there and saying that it's this
Paul on Damascus moment.
And even it may not be something that you realize ever happened, but just at some point you were like, you decided that you were going to live for something more than just yourself.
Well, that's certainly the story told every Sunday when we do baptism at church. Rarely does someone tell some story about how like they got knocked down to their knees or something. It was just kind of like, but they did eventually have a moment where they're like, you know what, I'm all in this thing. I don't know why I'm fighting it. Like, yes, he is who he says he is. He did die on the cross and raise up 3 days later, and I'm going to follow him. I don't know.
But I don't think there has to be a give in. I don't know. I'm saying that I don't think there has to be this like, I don't think it's this moment or whatever, and I do think that there is kind of that hard part where again, like it's kind of like I joked about the Calvinists, but there is kind of that idea where you just get to be like, okay, my hands are clean. It's up to the Holy Spirit after this.
But how do we differentiate between it being a moment where the Holy Spirit, where you're transformed, and like he's talking about, where we're now not of the world, but we're now of the we're in the world, but not of the world, and we're following Jesus, and that's changing our worldview. How do we know how that's different between just like reading a self-help book and deciding that I'm gonna, I'm gonna read Atomic Habits and change the way I do things. That's where I struggle with. Then the gospel just starts sounding like everything else. You know what I mean?
I understand what you mean, but then you also have to, like, no offense to Atomic Habits, and I know that's not where you're going with that, but no offense to whatever book has been written, but okay, so you're somebody who got to write that within a Christian ethical model that you were raised up in. Like, again, the more you are raised up in that ethical model system, the more you can sit there and say that you feel like you've got your finger on the pulse of what is actually right and what is wrong. And I was like, oh, congratulations, you found... Well, and so some of the claims that people have made is that actually they believe that Jesus was doing the same thing with Buddha. They believe, so the Silk Road concept comes, and they believe, because Buddha, I believe, is 300 years before Jesus, and so they think that Jesus gets his finger on the pulse of Buddha. So that's some of the claims that agnostics have, is that he's able to consume Buddhism on the Silk Road, and therefore is able to he's actually preaching a lot of the teachings of Buddha. And that's where a lot of people make those connections between those.
Interesting. Well, if you're listening to this, just as a little side note on that topic, understand if you've been taught or you believe that like Jesus was singularly a new thinker, there's a lot of stuff about, and I'm not, boy, you always got to be careful saying this kind of stuff, because you might say it to the wrong person, and they're like, that's it, now I'm out on my faith. Now I got to listen to Lesslie here and believe the Holy Spirit's going to speak to them. Christians get over their skis when they say that. There's a lot of stuff in Jesus's life and what he says that are in Zoroastrianism, which predates Jesus, I think, by more than even Buddhism. So that is not in any way to discredit what Jesus said. It's just not everything he said is original to him. It's not the first time it was spoken in human history. So,
and it doesn't mean that it's not.
No, it doesn't mean it's.
Doesn't mean that it's not in line with God's teaching or what God wants for the world.
Correct.
So, and which I believe that God 100% can use people from all over the world. It doesn't have to just be Jews in Jesus. And so,
well, we've never discussed on this podcast the whole what the verse that talks about how those who've never heard Jesus can still be Jesus followers. I mean, that's been debated. It's because it's just kind of thrown out. I don't even remember where it is, but it has been mentioned on the show, but it was mentioned. It's always been mentioned in relation to our dear departed friend Richard when he was part of our college group, because I think every single Sunday when I was leading the college group, he'd bring up, all right, well, what about the savage? And the such and such verse says, those who don't know me still know me. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. That's the question that puzzles everybody. So, because no one wants to get in this realm of universalism.
yeah, and I mean, well, okay, so...
But to his point, Jesus is a specific culture in a specific time.
Well, and so, I mean, here's something that Brian Yo used to bring up that was always fun. So do you... And I think we've maybe talked about it on the show before. We talked about, do you believe that aliens exist? And so that's kind of a funny question. But then, okay, so if aliens exist, then we do believe that since God loves all of his creation, then we would believe that therefore God would love these extraterrestrial beings. And so therefore, did they fall in the way that humanity fell? Do these beings that have intelligence that would be on par with ours or whatever, did they fall like we fell? And then how does God redeem them?
Right.
Through that process. And so, okay, but then let's take that to humanity in general. Could God have sent multiple messengers at some point? besides just the Jews. The
Right.
Jews are God's chosen people, but does that not mean that he could have talked in other people? And that doesn't mean that those people didn't change the way that they might have interpreted what God's message was for the world, but at least it might have started the conversation of, redeeming humanity.
Right.
And so I don't know. It's something to ponder. I think your response to Richard is, fair, where you're just like, dude, nobody knows. Stop asking that to fucking 19-year-olds that are just trying to figure their life out.
I think it's an interesting. It's those kind of discussions are. You're playing with fire when you mess with those, when you bring up those discussions, because I think they're fascinating discussions if you're a firm believer who's unshakable in their faith.
Yeah.
And you're capable of saying, look, I believe that Jesus is who he was and is, did what's written that he did. But I'm also willing to believe that not all things, that the Jesus that we read of is a Western figure that leaves out North America. It leaves out the Western Hemisphere at that time. It leaves out the Eastern world. And my human sense of fairness and justice that raises questions about how Jesus can only be speaking to this part of the world. And so, maybe there's other things that we don't understand that, like you said, like maybe there were other people who came and spoke. And it's one of those late night having beers on a podcast kind of conversations. But if that's one of the things, if you're not deep in your faith, don't go down that route, because then that can lead you to, I think, universalism or agnosticism or that kind of thing, where you turn away from your faith. And that's not what I want anyone to draw from this podcast. So
Right.
Or from a college group at a Baptist church in 2012.
Yeah. Shadow Richard.
Cheers, Richard. All right, you want to do the last beer and then wrap it up?
Sure.
We might do some more chapters out of this book as I continue to read through it. We'll do another book club. Oh wow! Just flipped to page 93, and he's got second law of thermodynamics. Wow, what are we doing here? What is this, a physics book or a theology book? I think your phone's ringing, or you've got an alarm going off.
Yeah, it's my hop-off technology alarm. It's on Sunday through Thursday. Let's get off technology at 9 o'clock.
Oh. That doesn't include Kraken games, though.
It doesn't include Kraken games. So don't get off.
That is quite a can.
Well, you should check it out. This might need to go on your little...
Yeah, I think so.
over there.
That's up there with
the Thunder Thighs chick.
Oh yeah, so that can's a revisionist can, and I think I know I have a science fiction book from the 80s in the garage somewhere, and I think I know exactly where that art came from. Yeah, this is up there with that those two fantastic cans that Fieldwork had last week too.
Oh yeah.
Society. The Seeker IPA 7.0 alcohol content. Let's see what it says. What are we brewed with? I don't think it says. It's just a very it's a very geometric art. It's very cool. The Seeker. I'm sure this is some reference to something. Oh, Well, Society, the pupil. What do they call it? I think. Yeah. So this is the Seeker. This is. Is this a movie or a show? A book or something? Isn't there a book called The Seeker or a show? Who knows? Let's see what the Google machine says. There is the Who song. They call me the Seeker. The Seeker, Dark Rising. The Seeker, Dark Rising. Let's see. That's. I don't know.
Ooh. Ooh. This is a New Zealand IPA is what this is. Just based off of smell.
Yeah, there's the Who song. It's not. This isn't based on the Who song.
Yeah. It's New Zealand. It's not a bad New Zealand.
Huh. Oh yeah, it's got that funk.
I was like, you can smell it.
We've got the funk. Oh no. Yeah, no. That's tasty. That's like yeah, I don't mind that. I think that's what were we told. When they throw it in the boil, that's when it gets really skunky.
Yeah, it's not. Again,
That tastes
Tim
a lot
and I
like
used
what
to be.
that tastes a lot like what Belching Beaver generates. Has that similar kind of flavor profile.
Well, remember it was that Belching Beaver collab.
I know.
Um,
Because they went all in on New Zealand and the Terps, which
Yeah,
both had that funk.
well, and remember, and for anybody that's listening to this and you're our friends, if you remember a couple years ago, Tim and I actually were pretty big New Zealand fans. It's just we've had really bad ones,
Yeah, we got burned.
and so it's just kind of hard.
Yeah,
So,
what's the one from?
there's the Stone one that was really bad.
Well, the really good one though that we very much enjoyed was the Dust Bowl one.
Yeah, we used to have the Dust Bowl one, but then even now the Dust Bowl, it was west of Nelson or east of Nelson.
Yeah, there you go.
And that one was good. Used to order that one. But even now, and here's the thing about New Zealand IPAs is that when they first came out, it was kind of like a nice, refreshing break from the hazies that were coming out all the time. But now they all kind of have the similar flavor profile, and you're just kind of like, all right, you had one, you kind of have them all. And at least you're not having them all. They all do taste different, but there is a certain flavor profile that comes with them. Am I supposed to stop talking or
No,
what?
no, keep talking. It's not, the page isn't loading.
Oh. So, yeah, that's just kind of how they go. But yeah, so it's nice to have one that tastes like how we remember they used to taste. So this was good. I don't think I'd order it at the brewery just because I'm like, meh, I'd be good. But if I wanted to, I was like, yeah, I'll go for something dank or whatever. I'll order one. So
Society's website's not. Oh, there we go. Finally. Yes. Beer. Our beer. Coachman. Pupil. The Harlot. I don't think we've had the heart. Oh, it's blonde. That's why.
yeah, that's probably why.
Bulbous flower. Here we go. The Seeker. Savvy citrus spirit. Citrus-centric IPA takes on a devout pursuit of dank hop aroma. The Seeker looks to the humulus lupulus as a vehicle for an ever-expanding palate. Wisdom and enlightenment may be within reach, but only for the genuine sage who never fails to visit the wishing well.
Wow, that told me nothing. But they didn't write it on their can, so I couldn't have read that out loud earlier.
See if we can buy beer from Society.
Oh, that's a good thing.
You can get
Thing to
six-packs.
take a look at.
Stock your fridge with the latest offerings. You can get a case of beer shipped between $45 and $53. Questions of shipping. It's always the...
Yeah, shipping's the problem.
Let's try Pupil. Local delivery shipping. It's not terrible. Oh wait, no, that's not it. Check your address.
The hard part is about Society, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing about them. They are not as experimental.
No.
So you're not going to get something new every couple of weeks that you're going to be like, oh, yeah, this is like, something to try. That's the thing about Stone. That's like worth, again, that whole like $10 shipping shit is just like, oh, yeah. I get to try something new or even something, that I haven't had in a while or whatever. Sorry, did we give enough love to Stone's?
Oh, they have the new... sorry, we're just rambling now. If you want to tune out, I totally get it at this point.
I was like, we said we were going to plan on closing anyway. So.
They are releasing their new... The first drink buy has been released.
Oh, yeah.
Which I'm not going to
420?
bother paying to ship because we should be able to get it around here, but...
420 is this one? No.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
They do 4. And so, yeah, it's 420, it's 4th of July, it's Halloween, and it's New Year's. Yeah.
Hey, $7 is shipping.
Wow. Way to go, Society.
I wonder if that increases the more I buy.
Yeah, I was like, is that a flat rate?
Huh?
I was asking, is that a flat
I
rate?
don't know. What else? It ain't that much to buy.
Yeah. What about Barley and Sword? Someday.
Yeah, I have the dude's business card, and I need to berate him and say, hey, even if you're not officially shipping,
Yeah. Send us a cake.
send us something.
Send us something for the Saturday morning soccer session.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which we're doing breakfast burritos next on the first weekend in March. So, oh wait, are you gonna be here? Yeah, you'll be here.
I'll be here.
Oh wait, you're gone the weekend before our trip.
Yeah, I'm gone 2 weeks, so I'm already prepping the groundwork for that. Being in trouble for that. She might have to go on the trip.
I think Monday. Is it Monday? I think it's Monday.
Which she might have to go on the trip, which might not end up working because I don't think Nolan can go on the trip.
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
So
figure that
just
out.
she and I will pay. She won't go. She'll meet us up after. She won't get up early to go to Younger, so she'll sleep in and do whatever she wants to do on Saturday, and then join us later.
Well, that may work because if we're all planning on taking a nap, we do have to find a way of getting the vehicles back. What was the other thing I was gonna say? Oh, that's St. Patty's weekend.
Is it? Mm-hmm. Oh my!
I know you're gonna be gone for St. Patty's weekend.
It's St. Patrick's Day, the same weekend as the race.
I think it's that Monday.
Oh, that's terrible. We've been throwing really good parties.
I know. That's why I was like, oh, bummer.
Damn.
That's my favorite day of the year, actually. Or that's my favorite holiday. People ask me what my favorite holiday is. That's my favorite holiday.
I'll have to do a St. Patrick's later.
I have a rich. Oh no, wait. We talked about this on the podcast, right? Nolan asked, or we talked about our favorite holidays. Yours is Easter. Nolan's is 4th of July. Mine St. Patrick's Day. I was like, and mine's not even from a drinking perspective, although I do enjoy drinking on St. Patrick's Day. Mine's actually from, I love corned beef, cabbage, and potatoes. I know that sounds so fucking dumb to everybody.
No, my wife and
like,
I do too.
You're like, that's a $10 meal that feeds 20 people.
And she does not like the way I now cook it. And I'm like, too bad, because it's the most amazing corned beef I've ever had. So
yeah, I'm just,
sure. I mean, although the last time I made it in the crock pot, in November, it turned out perfect. Like the meat was like chipping apart. It was fantastic. Yeah. But a lot of times it doesn't work that way, even in the slow cooker.
But also the key is you do need to go out, and I know it sounds so dumb when it comes to corned beef, but just go pay the extra $2 for a higher quality corned beef. I
either got the one we had. It was Costco usually has pretty
Costco
good
has good
the
meat
one that I
whatever,
had for that might have been from Quality Meats.
I was like, don't buy the bottom shelf corned beef. I was like, you're gonna pay for it in the long run. And I've learned that about just meat in general is just it does make a difference.
Yeah.
When you buy prime versus I was at the
everyone just assumes because it's got one layer of fat on one side that it's gonna slowly cook and fatten up, and that's not necessarily the case.
Well, and I was at the meat locker once, and I was listening to the guy talk about what are the two. It's not choice. It's it's prime versus what's the other one? I don't know. There's the lower quality one. And he was talking to the guy, and he's like, well, like, if you feel like prime is a lot more forgiving as far as your cooking, but as long as you know what you're doing, then it'll come out roughly around the same. And I was like, I always wanted to tell the guy, I was like, but I'm not going to overstep my bounds or whatever, but I was going to be like, dude, I've been cooking that particular protein for a long time, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's better to just pay the extra $2 and get the prime. Like, I was like, you'll notice a difference. If you came to the meat locker and you were like, and you're getting the cheap one, then you wasted your time coming to the meat locker, in my opinion. Not that I don't have a problem with that, but it's just like you're going to get the same thing as you were getting somewhere else. But if you go and you get the prime, then all of a sudden this is a cut of meat that is more tender, and you're just like, what the heck? Now, I don't know about the Wagyu stuff. I do understand I understand why Wagyu is given so much love because of the fat that's throughout the protein, as opposed to just on the rim or on the outside. But which is crazy. How do they do that? What is it about the Japanese cows that allow, or even now they have American and Canadian?
They have very stringent rules on how the cows are raised. So they're like literally grass fed in like the northern part of Japan, and so they have very strict rules on.
So like the grass fed makes it to where the fat deposits are throughout the entirety of the protein.
I don't know. Well, I'm sure
that's so weird. I'm wondering from like a biological level, like how does that work? Like I don't like.
Well, okay, that's probably different. That's probably because they've kept the bloodline clean, where we probably have 5 different kinds of cow that have been in the injected into the North American strain of beef.
Well, I'm assuming now if you have like American or Canadian Wagyu, they bought Japanese Wagyu cows is my assumption. And
that's you can get American Wagyu here locally in Tulare.
Yeah.
And we've gotten meat there a couple times as a gift. It's usually as a gift from somebody. Yeah. And it's amazing.
Yeah. But and if you look at the steak, like it's unlike any other steak you've ever seen. You just look at the fat deposits that are it's like it goes red, white. It's like a checkerboard. It's like red, white, red, white, red, white, red, white, and you're like, well, how does that work? Or pink, white, pink, white, pink, white, pink, white. I was like, maybe this is a question for Andy. How does that work on a biological level?
You can get pretty much everything Belching Beaver makes. They now ship it in California directly to you.
Oh, right on. For how
I
much?
might have to get this American lager shipped for the next soccer day.
Hey, do you have a phone charger?
I do.
I know you do. I know you have several in this household, but I don't know if you have one that's like easily accessible. I won't be able to drive home until my phone turns back on.
Oh, well, I can either give you a cord or I can give you this.
Nor will I get to know.
Oh, that was a terrible throw.
Nor will I get to know what the hockey score is until my phone turns back on.
Oh, well, we could finish recording and go watch it in the living room.
All right. Well, we thank you for listening to this episode of the Go to Hell podcast.
And just so Colton knows, on the next episode, we're just going to talk about Acts 15, since he talked about how we don't talk about the Bible. Yeah. Thanks for listening. And if you don't like... If you don't ship beer in California, you can go to hell. Talking to you, Coronado.
If you don't think that the Luka Doncic trade was a conspiracy,
Yeah, if you don't think the Luka Doncic trade was a conspiracy to keep the Lakers relevant for another 15 years, you can go to hell. And I'm a Laker fan, and I still find it absurd. Go to hell, Luka. You fat sweet tea drinking bastard.